Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be taking a close look at, well, a pretty powerful message. It's Psalm 50 from the New Living Translation of the Bible.
Yeah, that's right. This one is attributed to Asaph, and it's not exactly subtle in its delivery. I mean, talk about an attention-grabbing opening, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right out of the gate, it's like, picture this. God, not just sort of casually mentioning things, but speaking, like actually speaking out to, well, everyone, all of humanity.
Yeah.
And get this, the setting is Mount Zion. And it's not just a mountain, right? It's completely engulfed in this blazing glory. And there's fire before him, a consuming fire. And there's this raging storm happening all around him. I mean, talk about a scene, right?
It really sets the stage, doesn't it? It's not just some quiet, reflective moment. This is a divine summons, a call to judgment, with everything heaven and earth called to witness. You instantly get the feeling that something big is about to be said.
And that's precisely what we're going to be unpacking in this deep dive. What does God truly want from us, from his people, according to this psalm? That's what we're going to explore.
Right. We want to move beyond just, the spectacle of it all and really dig into the core of what's being communicated here.
Okay, so let's start with that opening. Verses 1 through 3, they really paint this incredible picture of God's, well, his complete authority, his undeniable presence.
It's almost overwhelming, isn't it? The sheer scale of it. This isn't just a message for a select few. It's a summons to all of humanity, which really drives home the point of God's sovereignty. And the imagery, that light emanating from Zion set against the fire and the storm, it's just, well, it's both beautiful and a bit terrifying.
The Lord, the Mighty One, is God, and he has spoken.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear statement, I'd say.
Hard to argue with that one. Then in verses 5 and 6, there's this call. Bring my faithful people to me, those who made a covenant with me by giving sacrifices. Here we encounter this idea of a covenant. It's like a binding agreement, a commitment between God and his people, and it's often marked by, well, in this case, sacrifice.
And it's interesting, right, how this initial connection is made between faithfulness and sacrifice. It's like a deliberate act that establishes this special relationship. But as we're going to see, the psalm really challenges our understanding of what true sacrifice actually looks like. And then right after that call, the heavens themselves declare God's justice. God himself will be the judge. I mean, talk about setting the tone for accountability, right?
Oh, yeah. So we have this incredibly powerful scene, right? We have God's authority on full display, this covenant with his people, and this looming sense of judgment. And then things take this really interesting turn, maybe even a bit surprising, when we get to verses 7 through 13. Because God says, I have no complaint about your sacrifices or the burnt offerings you constantly offer, but I do not need the bulls from your barns or the goats from your pens.
This is where it gets really fascinating. You might expect a psalm that's talking about sacrifice to really emphasize its importance. But here, God immediately shifts the focus.
So what is he saying here? I mean, at first it seems like a contradiction, like on the one hand, no complaints, but on the other, well, there's some pretty strong rebukes later on. So how do we reconcile that?
I think the key is in the distinction between the act of sacrifice itself and the understanding, the heart behind it. The real issue isn't necessarily the offering, but the motivation.
And then he goes on to make this incredible statement, this declaration of ownership. For all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine. Like, it's almost like God is saying, look, do you really think I need anything from you? It's not about giving to God because he's lacking something, but rather reflecting his own abundance back to him,
Yeah, he's not some needy deity who requires appeasement. He's the source of everything. And then to really drive this point home, he uses these rhetorical questions that, well, I have to admit, I find kind of amusing. If I were hungry, would I tell you, for all the world is mine and everything in it? Do I eat the meat of bulls? Do I drink the blood of goats?
It's like he's almost chuckling at the absurdity of it all. Right?
Yeah, it's like, he's saying, come on, guys, seriously, do you really think that's what I'm after?
So if it's not about the literal animals, not about these outward offerings, then what is it that God truly desires? And that's where verses 14 and 15 come in. Because here there's this dramatic shift in focus. It says, make thankfulness your sacrifice to God and keep the vows you made to the Most High. Then call on me when you are in trouble and I will rescue you and you will give me glory. This feels like the real turning point, like the big reveal of the psalm, right?
Absolutely. The emphasis moves from external actions to internal attitudes. And it's this thankfulness that's presented as the true sacrifice, the one that truly matters. And it's linked to this idea of keeping vows vows of integrity and commitment. And then there's this promise, this assurance that if you do these things, if you call on God in times of trouble, he will rescue you and you will bring him glory. It's a reciprocal relationship built on trust and gratitude.
So it's not just about going through the motions, not about empty rituals. It's about a genuine heart change, a heart filled with thankfulness. And that changes everything, doesn't it? It changes how we approach our entire relationship with the divine.
Right. It completely reframes our understanding of what it means to connect with God.
Okay, so we've got this beautiful message about thankfulness and obedience, and then the psalm takes another turn, and starting in verse 16, God addresses the wicked. And there's this really stark contrast between the message that was just given to the faithful and this, well, pretty intense condemnation.
It's almost like, okay, we've covered what it looks like to truly honor God, and now here's the flip side. And what's interesting is who's being labeled as wicked in this context. It's not necessarily those who haven't offered sacrifices, but those who have recited God's laws, who have claimed to be in covenant with him, but whose actions completely contradict their words.
And the accusations are pretty specific, right? Refusing discipline, treating God's words with contempt, approving of thieves, associating with adulterers, speaking wickedness and lies, slandering family.
Yeah, it's not just about like minor slip-ups. These are serious offenses. It's like this blatant disregard for God's values despite claiming allegiance to him. And the line in verse 21, you thought I didn't care, that one really hits hard. It speaks to this dangerous self-deception where outward appearances mask this complete lack of genuine respect for God.
It's like God's patience was mistaken for indifference or, I don't know, even approval. But now the silence is broken,
Yeah.
and there's this really direct, forceful rebuke. It's a pretty stark warning, I'd say.
Right. God is not oblivious to injustice. He sees it all, and there will be a reckoning.
And that brings us to the final section, verses 22 and 23, where we find both a warning and a promise. Repent, all of you who forget me, or I will tear you apart, and no one will help you. That's pretty serious stuff, right?
It underscores the urgency, the absolute necessity of turning away from wickedness. There's no middle ground here. But then there's this beautiful shift back to hope. But giving thanks is a sacrifice that truly honors me. If you keep to my path, I will reveal to you the salvation of God.
And so we come full circle. The true way to honor God, the real sacrifice, it all comes back to thankfulness.
Yeah.
And this time it's directly connected to the promise of salvation for those who choose to walk in God's ways.
It's a powerful conclusion, and it drives home the central message of this psalm. True devotion isn't about empty rituals, it's about a transformed heart, a life lived in alignment with God's principles.
All right, so let's take a moment to recap what we've discovered in this deep dive into Psalm 50. The core message seems to be this. Genuine devotion isn't about religious practices or even material offerings. I mean, God doesn't need our stuff. It's about cultivating a heart of thankfulness, living in obedience, and striving to align our values with God's values.
It's about recognizing that true change comes from within. It's about who we are, not just what we do.
And so as you reflect on this deep dive into Psalm 50, here's something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
What does thankfulness as a sacrifice actually look like in your own life? I mean, how can you move beyond just saying the words thank you and actually embody that principle, that attitude of gratitude? How might that shift your perspective, your relationship with, well, whatever you consider to be divine, or even just with the guiding principles that are important to you?
It's a question that goes beyond just expressing gratitude and invites us to consider how we actually live our lives, the choices we make, the values we prioritize.
We really encourage you to go back and read Psalm 50 for yourself. There's so much wisdom packed into these verses, and we hope this deep dive has given you some new insights. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us.